Bussey here in Australia, talking to all of you lovely folk at the International Conference on Gender Equity. I would like to acknowledge the ICGE panel for their care in curating this beautiful conference, and also for Lady Rachel Lundgren for personally inviting me to be part of this. I want to share some thoughts with you now on what I'm calling the gender agenda, and to take a planetary perspective on this tricky issue, because to me we need to reframe how we think about gender so that we can better understand what's going on and how to rise to the occasion, to answer the call that issues of justice and injustice and so on are releasing and putting out into the world. So let's get onto it right now. So here you've got this beautiful picture of our planet, right? And the planet to me is calling us to action. And that calling is what I'd like to focus on first, because even as the world seems to be entering into a darkness shaped by violence, shame, terror, fear, I feel something else is happening. I feel a counter surge. Do you feel it too? I suspect that many here at this conference too, we are called to resist, but perhaps also to transform. Gatherings like this conference are significant as they generate sites to explore what it is that calls us into the world. The Spirit calls us, okay, and its voice has many dimensions. It's not a single calling like the old telephone. Hello, this is me calling you. No, Spirit calls in multiple ways according to where we are on the planet, what time in history we're living, and so on. And of course, also our own way of communicating with Spirit. I just want to touch briefly on the beauty of Afrofuturism, which I've been inspired by for many years now and have followed it. Ahmed Best, who played the character Jar Jar Binks in the Star Wars movies, for instance, is an eloquent exponent of Afrofuturism, but there's an aesthetics to it. And so one of the things that calls me and speaks to my spirit is the aesthetics, okay? But there are many ways to think about this. Some of us are called to heal, others are called to fight, others to organize, others to love, others to regenerate, others to pray and meditate, others to sing, others to reframe and go on with other things like think, care, nurture, remember too. All these are ways of thinking about what might call to you and to me. Of course, it's not a singular. Maybe we're called to heal and love or organize, and maybe organizing is our modality for healing. But this question of the calling is really important to me, because if we can understand and clearly articulate how we are called, then we're more likely going to be able to rise to the occasion that this planet and all its planetary issues is challenging us to embrace and engage with. So what's the question? Given we have the capacity to distribute our planet's resources equitably without destroying our Mother Earth, why are we not doing so? So at the heart of all questions around equity, I think, is this distributive issue. And of course, if half the world, being female, women, are excluded from this issue, then we're seriously in trouble, of course. We're compromised. So for me, there is an gender agenda which I would like to speak to. When looking at our planetary predicament, it is clear that issues of equity are central to collective well-being for all life on the planet. So the gender agenda challenges us, you could say it calls us, to rethink what it means to be human, and also how to frame the challenges we face. So we are, as this conference central theme states, charting the next frontier. So what happens if we got it right? What would that be like? Can you imagine a world in which people and planet coexist in harmony? How does that vision feel to you? It need not be a utopian vision, but rather a heterotopian vision. That's a beautiful word coined by the French philosopher Michel Foucault for multiple goods coexisting, thriving. How does our calling fit into the plan to get there? That's something we need to consider. Your calling, my calling. Can we co-call? Can we co-create around our callings? Can we bring different forces that we all embody into play so that we can engage with the co-creation of planetary harmony, for instance? What kind of map does it generate, this kind of calling? And who can we work with to co-create optimal futures in which there are no losers, as currently understood? So one of the things that's really key to this is what's called imagination activism. The human heart, mind, soul, crowded with images drawn from the past, shaped in the present and projected into the futures before us. Futures are always plural, by the way. We can disrupt dominant hegemonic images with our imagination. All cultural shifts occur in the imagination first. Our calling is not accidental, no. It is a deliberate calling to engage with cultural evolution. We can push boundaries by exploring the plausible, the possible, the preferable, even the preposterous futures that we need to play with. But I want to underline this fact that the calling of our age, our time, is a deliberate calling. It is not accidental. There is no accident that all you wonderful people at this conference are here and that I'm speaking to you. No accident at all. So, what if we generate, over the coming century, a rich culture of inclusion in which gender becomes a tool for spiritual and imaginative liberation? What if women, men, and the gender fluid can all love one another as rich representatives of a thriving ecosystem whose health is premised on diversity? And what if you and I contribute to these visions right now, as this conference invites and triggers gender diverse futures? Wonderful questions, and I believe questions are so powerful in transforming the imaginative terrain we inhabit. But first, we need to consider, what's the context we're doing this what-ifing in? Planetary evolution is key. The planet as a whole is the context, of course. It is also the site in which we can see ourselves and our cultures reflected back at us. Where there's poverty, environmental degradation, and so on, we are called to waken up to those issues and respond to them. Consciousness, therefore, evolved through this kind of struggle with the environment. We are called, but we need to deep listen to understand how that call is working. Deep listening, coined by and developed by Warren Ziegler, a wonderful futurist, is there in the link. I see in this deep listening and in the calling that gender acts as a fulcrum. We are being called to move from a dominator, patriarchal, androcentric kind of worldview to a partnership worldview. A partnership worldview has no people on top. It is not the kind of hierarchical sort of framework. It is much more a collegial and collaborative world. It's not to say that we don't have leaders, but the way we think about power and we distribute agency through the planet's system is reimagined completely. I want to touch now on what I'm calling the wound. Okay, the wound we suffer from is one of separation. We separate male from female, LGBTQI from the heteronormative, the inner from the outer, nature from culture, before from after, them from us, spirit from matter, and so on. We can talk about separation in many ways. Well, I would argue that we are called to return to wholeness. It is a kind of macro or meta calling. And we will get there by, thinking about how am I called? How is each one of us called? Obviously, I am a communicator. I am an educator. So I am called to do some of the thinking, some of the wayfinding, but I don't think that's exclusive to the kind of career and role path that I've had. Wayfinding is something we all do. Wayfinding is making sense of the world around us in small slices at first because we can't see the big picture of us as a species. Gender is one essential pathway to do this, of course. I'm arguing with the gender agenda that gender is the canary in the mine shaft. I want to remind you, I guess, that something big, really big, is happening. We are feeling the pressure of global challenges as individuals, communities, societies, and as a species. There is a species-level event going on. And as a species, we can't see from the individual perspective what's going on at all. Responding creatively to these challenges starts with gender. And I want to touch on feminist futures, which I think and see as a very powerful tool in challenging the current business-as-usual trajectory of our planet. Feminist Futures offers not just a critique of power, but also a powerful alternative set of visions. Feminist Futures has a prophetic dimension to it. It is a prophetic response to the crisis of separation. Now, how do I understand feminism? Well, I'm linking it to spirituality, and a spirituality of resistance. One of my favourite people wrote a fabulous book called The Outrageous Pursuit of Hope way back in the year 2000, is a woman called Mary Gray. She's a liberation theologian, and she has this, and I want to read this to you because I think it is delicious and provocative. She says she's arguing about a spirituality of resistance and struggle that refuses to let injustice have the last word. Let us be clear, she says, this is not an opting out from society, a retreat to an inner world where Christians settle down cozily in their own ideals and give up on social critique. No, far from it, she says. Prophetic critique today will work as far as possible with whatever forces or energies of the society are leading in the right direction. And we can measure that right direction by our heart, our sense of whether there's justice or injustice, pain or possibility, and so on. The point about a spirituality of resistance, she concludes, is that we already live from a different vision. And I would say that that's a vision that we're sharing today in this conference. And this, she concludes, is what is so energizing. And I find whenever I start engaging with questions around alternatives that I get excited. And this question of calling and deep listening is really important. So to conclude, sorry, alternatives, they start with us and they scale up to the species. In some mysterious way, I'd have to say. But if we turn this formulation around and recognize that we are a species with species-level impact, then our individual actions take on a new potency. I'm croaking away, aren't I? So, back to our calling. What do you feel called to do, be, and become? I love this question. It's worth many conferences, but also we have to have a conference of the heart. You have to sit in your own spaces and deep listen to what is our soul calling us to do. I want to thank you very much for listening. Deeply appreciate your time and the grace of being with you all. Goodbye.